to think I built up my Mexican roots / Latina street cred in the last video, and I might just flush it down the toilet in this video. Let's find out how low I can go. Something you might not know about me is that I love action movie trash. I love it. I can't get enough. Since I studied film in college, that's what my degree's in, and I call myself a student of the cinema, you might think all I watch and enjoy are prestige, art house, Oscar bait movies. I won't waste my time watching anything else. Wrong. Most of those fancy pants movies are super duper boring, and I prefer an action movie any day of the week. If you've ever wondered who the Expendables series was made for, it's made for me and my mom. That movie was made for us specifically, and we appreciate it. Thank you so much, aging action heroes. I have to establish my cinema credit before we move on. I might have to establish my progressive liberal credit too, but that's probably for a different video. I'm not saying all prestige, Oscar bait art house movies are bad. There are a lot of good ones, but most of them are boring. Pretty sure I've said this in other videos, but I have no idea if I don't have an attention span anymore or a lot of those movies are actually slow and boring. Maybe it's a combination of both. It takes a lot of skill to keep a plot going and people engaged. A lot of those fancy schmancy movies don't use the medium of film to its ultimate potential. In the film medium, there are images, framing, lighting, and editing that other mediums don't have. Most of those fancy films are just folks talking in rooms. Those stories could be a play or a TV show. If filmmakers want me to get out of the house and drive the 12 miles to the theater to pay $20 a ticket, it better be worth my time and money. Show me something new, something interesting, something visually exciting. The place where we do get new, interesting, visually exciting stuff is in action movies. Action movies are the ones that historically have had the most impact of moving the medium of film forward. The oldest example of this is the Méliès brothers and A Trip to the Moon. The most famous examples are Star Wars in 1977 and The Matrix in 1999. These changed the film world, technology, and storytelling forever. The most recent example is the John Wick series. That's why so many mise en scène kind of look like neon noir now. Action movies are the purest form of cinema there is. In French, film theory, there is a concept of pure cinema. Pure cinema is more about images, framing, and editing, not necessarily telling a narrative story, but you could tell a narrative story without words or sounds, just images. In many intro to cinema classes, you have to shoot a short with no dialogue to help you think about telling a story visually. That is what pure cinema is, and no other genre is more pure cinema than action movies. Most of those movies, you could take out all the sound and dialogue and you'd still know who is good, who is bad, and the basic story of what is happening. So, action movies do have artistic and technical merits if they're done right. Action movies are also where you can weed out good from bad filmmakers. If an action sequence is good, it's not jumbled confusion or hidden behind edits. I've seen an obscene number of action movies. Some of them are great, but the majority are terrible. You'd think that an action movie would be the easiest thing to do, but it's not. It takes a lot of skill and know-how to do a good action movie. I think I've established my film cred enough for this video, so we can move on to what this video is actually about. Today, we are going to talk about the last part of one of the most legendary action series, Rambo: Last Blood. Spoilers, I enjoyed the hell out of this movie the first time I saw it in theaters. After watching it 3 times for this video, it doesn't stand up well to rewatch. Regardless,
Cartoon violence! Cartoon violence!
this movie is the perfect piece of content to explore an idea I've had for a while. Can you just watch and enjoy something that is super duper problematic? Is there a limit or threshold? Does everything have to have a political agenda? How seriously do we have to take media like this? Does everything have to be overanalyzed and overthought to death? I have many questions, and hopefully we will be able to answer a few of them in this video. Let's go. It's crazy that this franchise is a franchise. Rambo started off as a book called First Blood, written by David Morrell. Spoilers, at the end of the book, John Rambo dies. The movie First Blood sticks pretty close to the novel, except for the Rambo dying at the end part. The book was published in 1972, and after folks like Clint Eastwood and Robert De Niro were in talks to play John Rambo, in 1981, producer Ted Kotcheff offered the role to Oscar-nominated screenwriter Sylvester Stallone. With the Italian Stallion on board, First Blood the movie was in production. First Blood is all about how the Vietnam War messed up soldiers, and we got our first real mainstream look at soldiers with PTSD. The movie leans into the false idea that Vietnam vets were treated horribly and spit on when they came back from the war. From the time of Vietnam till now, all the anti-war sentiment is only directed at policy, politicians, and war in general. Support for soldiers and their families have always been high, and most everyone in the United States knows and is grateful for the service of all our military folks. All Brian Dennehy needed to do was apologize to Rambo and let him go on his way. You could have avoided so much carnage. First Blood was a surprise hit and spawned a sequel in 1985, Rambo: First Blood Part 2. Rambo is in jail, and in order to get a full pardon, he has to go rescue soldiers in a Vietnam POW camp. This movie also leans into the false idea that there were soldiers who were left behind in Vietnam in secret camps. There's no proof this actually happened. All there is are conspiracy theories. Rambo, with the help of Vietnamese rebel Bao, wins the Vietnam War, armed with nothing but a bow and arrow and some dynamite. Rambo gets a full presidential pardon and decides to live in Thailand. This one is probably the best one of the entire series, and yes, that would make me the most problematic person ever for thinking that. Next up, Rambo 3 in 1988. While in Thailand, Rambo gets recruited to go to save an army of troops in Afghanistan. Rambo in this movie doesn't want to be a soldier or killer anymore. Rambo only goes to save his friend and the soldiers out of a sense of obligation and duty. If his friend wasn't in trouble, Rambo probably wouldn't get involved. The first sign of John Rambo starting to think about his military status and training in a different way. In 2008, we got Rambo. There is a crisis in Burma.
Burma!
You most likely know it as Myanmar, but it'll always be Burma to me.
And Rambo has to save a group of missionaries who were kidnapped by the Burmese army. Rambo kills everyone in that army branch, saves the missionaries, and decides to go back to live in the US. Even though there is a hilarious amount of cartoon violence in this movie, there's a scene where Rambo machine guns someone into a pink mist. We see more of Rambo's reluctance to be a soldier and a killing machine. This is very interesting to me. It does go along with the main theme throughout the whole franchise of what war, killing, and glory mean to a person post World War II. We all saw Captain America and how eager Steve Rogers was to be enlisted and go to war. That eager jingoism doesn't seem to exist anymore, and surprisingly, I think the Rambo franchise knows and acknowledges this. First Blood and Last Blood are the most anti-war and anti-violence of the series. First Blood Part 2, Rambo 3, and Rambo are very Ronald Reagan. Being a no-good coastal liberal, I have a particular disdain for Reagan, his policies, his politics, and how he ruined everything. I'm not gonna go into it in this video, but seriously, look it up. Reagan ruined everything, and we are still living with those consequences. Since Reagan loved First Blood Part 2 and Rambo 3, I want to hate those movies, but I don't. They are very entertaining, and there is something in my lizard brain that finds all of these movies cathartic and satisfying. I'm going to try to put it into words in this video. We'll see how successful I am at that. I'm categorizing this Rambo series as semi-political. The series is more about soldiers and sympathy for them than touting any clear politics or policy. The only thing that is clear in this series is that there are obvious bad guys and we need John Rambo to go kill them all. I like that. In this current media landscape of understanding and sympathizing with the villain, I enjoy series like this where the villains get shot in the face. Let me give you an example of what I'm talking about. I don't like Joker, or Joker for her, Cruella, where the movie wants you to feel for a homicidal maniac and a woman that skins puppies for fashion. I don't want to identify or feel for those people. We don't need that. I need a clear good guy and a clear bad guy, and that bad guy needs to lose. Since things don't go that well in real life, I need it in my media. It gives me hope and makes me feel better about the world. Maybe there are good people still in it, and those good people do all they can to help the innocent. More of that, please. Let's finally get to the movie we are here to analyze. Last Blood had been in development hell since 2008. There were versions of the story that included Rambo having to fight human traffickers near the US-Mexico border, and Rambo having to fight and kill a genetically engineered monster also at the US-Mexico border. I'd watch that movie. It would be like Predator, but without any commentary on action movies and masculinity. In 2010, Stallone said there would never be another Rambo movie. In 2011, Rambo Last Stand was proposed as a full circle kind of story for John Rambo. The story was supposed to be a small town thriller very similar to First Blood. In 2014, the story of the movie changed to be a One Last Job style movie. The producers wanted a No Country for Old Men and Unforgiven tone, look, and feel. Creator of Rambo, Morrell, and Stallone pitched the idea to give John Rambo a more soulful, powerful, emotional ending. The producers thought that idea was lame and wanted the story to stick to the human trafficking plotline. Honestly, I want to see the more introspective and thoughtful Rambo. We get a little bit of that in this movie, but I'm sure not enough like Stallone and Morrell wanted. Production for this movie began in 2018 in Bulgaria. It was released into the world in September of 2019. I watched it in theaters because, of course I did. Now that we know how we got here, let's take a closer look at what we've got. Rambo Last Blood stars Sylvester Stallone as John Rambo, Yvette Monreal as Gabriela, Aino Monreal as Yolanda Montes, Wildcat in the CW show Stargirl. She is very good in that show. Adriana Barras as Maria, Paz Vega as Carmen, and Oscar Janada as Victor. You may remember Oscar as Mexican comedy icon Cantinflas in that biopic. More info about that here. John Rambo is living on his father's horse ranch in Bowie, Arizona. John works to train and break wild horses. John also has a hobby of digging tunnels under the ranch. Living with John on the ranch is his friend and housekeeper Maria and her granddaughter Gabriela. John has been a surrogate father for Gabriela, and she has been like a daughter to John. Gabriela is graduating high school and is looking forward to going to college. Before she can do that, Gabriela thinks she should find and talk to her biological father. John and Maria are adamantly against this idea. Gabriela's friend Giselle, who lives in Mexico, found Gabriela's father and convinces her to go to Mexico to talk to him. John tells her not to go. Her father is a terrible man and nothing good can come of it. Maria reminds Gabriela that John has been her father for the last 10 years and how her biological father is dead inside. Gabriela tells them that she won't go, but of course ends up going. Gabriela meets up with her friend, 1980s Chola Giselle, and they go to her biological father's house. Gabriela talks to the father. He tells her how much he hated her and her dead mother. This guy is a real gem. Gabriela runs out crying. 1980s Chola Giselle takes Gabriela to a club so they can blow off some steam and forget about the lousy father. Someone puts drugs in Gabriela's drink and we see she has been taken into a sex trafficking ring. Giselle tells Maria that Gabriela went down to Mexico and that she's disappeared. Maria tells John to bring back Gabriela to her. John goes down to Mexico, confronts the deadbeat biological father and Giselle. John figures out that Giselle sold Gabriela to the sex traffickers. John has Giselle point out the guy she sold Gabriela to in a nightclub. John confronts that guy and has him lead John to the headquarters of the sex traffickers. John confronts the sex traffickers and the leaders of the group, the Martinez brothers. The Martinez brothers beat up and scar John. One of the brothers, Cantinflas here, marks Gabriela and starts to drug her. John is left on the street to die, but a reporter that has been following him, Carmen, helps John. John is unconscious for 4 days, and we see Gabriela get drugged and used for that amount of time. Carmen fills John and us in on the Martinez brothers, how her sister was sold into sex slavery and died because of it. John finds out where Gabriela is being sold and takes out the men, tries to free the other girls and women, and gets Gabriela the hell out of there. Gabriela is in bad shape and really drugged up. While John is giving a heartfelt speech about regret and having a second chance at life by being a father to Gabriela, she dies. John drives over a border fence to his ranch. Maria and John are beyond heartbroken at Gabriela's death. Maria leaves the ranch. John buries Gabriela and starts to plot his revenge. John goes to Carmen to find out where the Martinez brothers live. John goes to Cantinflas' house and kills everyone. John leaves a picture of Gabriela so the other brother knows it was John and lures him back to Arizona. While the brother Hugo is getting his men together and over the border through underground tunnels, John is getting his ranch booby-trapped, Home Alone and James Bond Skyfall style. Hugo and his men get to the ranch and 20 minutes of carnage and cartoon violence happen. John leaves Hugo till the end. John bow and arrows Hugo to the barn wall, and with the knife he was going to give Gabriela, rips out his heart. When everyone is dead, John sits in a rocking chair to wait to die, maybe? It's not very clear. We see a montage of Rambo's best moments during the whole series. The end. I read a ton of reviews about this movie. What struck me as kind of weird was how they all basically say the same thing. This Last Blood movie is very racist and a Trump wet dream. I think two things are happening here. One, the first review came out and declared this movie as racist and Trumpian, so every other review has to ape and copy that sentiment. Two, the reviewers, being a bunch of white guys, feel like the movie is racist but are not sure how. So they go with the shallowest reading and analysis of the movie. Being a Latina that is very aware of tropes and racism, I did not get racist Trump vibes other folks claim are in this movie. When I first saw this movie, it felt more like the screenplay writers are folks that watch too much Primer Impacto. Like, Primer Impacto had a story about a girl that didn't listen to her dad. Hoy en Primer Impacto, le vamos a contar la historia de una muchacha que no le hizo caso a su papá y terminó muerta a causa de drogas y sexo. That's what this story felt more like than it being racist against Mexicans. To the point, when the movie was over, my mom, an actual Mexican, turned to me and said, "That's how it's done, López Obrador." A sentiment I agree 1000% with, by the way. Last Blood is a cautionary tale about disobeying your parents. It's the plot of Taken, basically. Taken is not racist because it's against white Eastern Europeans. Last Blood is because it takes place in Mexico. The fact that one group of people is allowed to be bad and the other is not is racist in itself. It also ignores the matter of fact that human trafficking and sex trafficking happens all the time. In Mexico, in Eastern Europe, in Southeast Asia, everywhere. It's something that happens and you have to obey your parents or else it will happen to you. The supposed racism is showing that Mexico is bad and dangerous and you should never go there. In the actual text of the movie, John doesn't want Giselle to go to see her father specifically. It's not Gabriela saying, "I want to go to Mexico," and John saying, "No, it's bad down there." Gabriela wants to see her deadbeat dad. John would forbid her from seeing him whether he was in Mexico or in the next county in Arizona. It's not about Mexico being bad. It's about her father being bad and Gabriela getting hurt. Again, it's about listening to your parents. They know what's best for you. These critics calling Last Blood racist don't mention the actual racist thing I noticed in the movie. Gabriela's friend, Giselle, looks like a 1980s chola. In 2019, I live in freaking East LA, the birthplace of Pachucos, Cholos, y Cholas. I haven't seen a straight up 1980s chola since the early 1990s. This chola I had big problems with in the movie. This stereotype is racist and harmful to the community. First generation kids of Mexicans are always being labeled as lazy and no good criminals, leaning into all the negative ideas racist folks already have about us. Not one mention about that in all of these criticisms. I'm telling you, these critics feel like something is racist, but they have no idea what is actually racist. Also, this style of chola would not be living in Arizona. This style of chola is from California. Get your stereotypes correct, please. The other criticism about Last Blood is that it's a Trumpian wet dream. I have to say, I don't see that either. Not once does John Rambo advocate for building a stupid, useless wall. In fact, in the movie, John is lucky there is no wall stopping him from driving his deceased daughter over the border back to his ranch. Also, the movie points out accurately that the bad guys won't be stopped by a wall. They will drive and travel through tunnels underneath any stupid, useless wall. One good guy against bad guys is not just the modus operandi of Trump Republicans, but of Americans in general. All Americans have been brought up with the idea that one person can stand against the evil in the world, and that's all we need. Spoilers, that's not all we need, but for pure populist entertainment, it's fine. Relax. Also, John John lives with some Mexican women and is helped by another Mexican woman in Mexico. Not once does he tell them not to speak Spanish or Mexican. John doesn't hate or is racist against everyday minorities. He hates criminals and other corrupt people, like the rest of us do. Usually in movies like this, it's an innocent white woman that has to be saved and protected from the scary men of color. Last Blood is kind of progressive in the fact that it's a brown Mexican girl, the one that has to be saved and protected. This movie is not as anti-Mexican as it's claimed to be. At least I don't see it. If you guys see something that I don't, leave me a comment and let me know. I'm very curious. Lastly, the other criticism about Last Blood is that it glorifies violence. Let me be clear, actual real-life violence is ugly and should not happen. Cartoon movie violence is awesome and should be in more movies. Last Blood, however, is surprisingly critical of violence. After being a soldier his entire life, John Rambo started off the series being messed up after the Vietnam War and ended the series wanting to leave violence behind and have a nice quiet family life. Unfortunately, the plot of the movie won't let him have peace. The first act of violence is this gross scene that shows how brutal, ugly, and not sexy violence actually is. Also, the violence against women is limited to our imagination. We never see Gabriela be brutalized, and I think that's on purpose. Violence against women is glorified and sexualized all the time in media. Last Blood makes the choice to not show any of that violence. It shows how horrifying and terrible violence and violence against women is. Sure, the last 20 minutes of the movie is nonstop cartoon violence. It's still brutal and kind of hard to watch. John is a killing machine and hates that fact. He wants to live a nice life but can't because of how brutal and violent the world is. I don't like real life violence, but if someone does something bad to my family or close friends, I will go full John Rambo on them. On the note of violence against women, I saw one critic out of a ton mention the trope of women in refrigerators. If you are not familiar, it's a trope that was coined by comic book creator Gail Simone. Simone was frustrated with so many comic book storylines having women be brutalized to motivate the hero to be heroic. Women only exist to be brutalized and killed so a male protagonist can build character. Yikes. I was surprised this trope wasn't mentioned at all when it comes to Last Blood because that is the only character development Gabriela has. She only exists so John Rambo can kill 800 sex traffickers. I would ding it for this women in refrigerators trope, but the fact that they tried to give her some character and she wasn't a white girl, I'ma let it slide. Yes. Well, it depends where your threshold is. My threshold is clearly in hell. Not everything has to be examined and picked apart if it's problematic. Let's get real. Everyone and everything in this world is some level of problematic. There is not one thing, not one person that is pure and virgin snow. It just depends on how much slack you're willing to cut someone. I'm not saying hateful, racist, sexist bigots can get a pass. They can't. Never. But most folks are more complicated and will fall short of perfection. Stallone, to my knowledge, has never been racist, sexist, or a bigot. The views on American policy and masculinity, I think, are more about him being from a different generation. Stallone grew up during the good old days that boomers love to talk about. He, like so many other people, have rose-colored nostalgia glasses. That is problematic dramatic, but I think it's understandable. And in Last Blood, I think Stallone is trying to reconcile where John Rambo started to where we are now, or then in 2019. Times change, attitudes change, morality changes. It's hard to reconcile past attitudes with modern morality. I think Last Blood does a decent job of balancing the past with the present. The supposed racism in this movie doesn't make anyone more racist, just like the supposed enlightenment of Crash didn't solve racism. The level of racist we are, and yes, all of us have some level of racism, depends on how much we try to fight it. For the vast majority of us, it takes a simple, calm, understanding conversation. For others, well, those folks are trolly and get off on being offensive and hateful. We don't associate with those people. I'm sure Stallone and other action movie stars don't intend on making a racist, hateful movie. They just lean in on certain stereotypes. If I was to say to Stallone, hey, stop using the 1980s chola trope and explain why it's bad, I'm sure he'd take it into consideration and not do it anymore. Or what I suspect happened is the studios, because racism sells, lean in on stereotypes and racism because that gets not only butts in seats, but also a lot of press coverage. All coverage is good coverage in our current media landscape. Does anyone need to be canceled? No. Should we tell folks, hey, stop doing that, please? Yes, absolutely. It's fine. Everyone needs to calm down. We're cool. I just spent a lot of time defending action movie trash. Now that doesn't mean everything is defendable. If there is something legitimately hateful, harmful, or terrible, don't defend it. Most action movie trash is fine and doesn't harm anyone. It is too campy and too silly to be taken too seriously anyway. Turn off your brain, enjoy the explosions and cartoon violence. And I don't need anyone defending Tarantino or La La Land to me. Both are terrible, semi-racist, and terrible. Did I mention terrible? Fight me in the comments. Would I recommend you guys watch Last Blood that is currently on Netflix? It depends. If you love action movie trash like I do, yeah, watch it. It's fun. If that isn't your jam, don't watch it. This kind of movie is all about taste. I have none, so I enjoyed it. I spent the beginning of this video establishing my cinema credit, and I want to spend the end establishing my action movie trash credit. Like I said before, I have seen an obscene amount of action movie trash. I could talk about those movies, tropes, motifs, and stars literally all day. Here is a small sample. When action movies are discussed, the only folks that are mentioned are Stallone, Schwarzenegger, and maybe Van Damme. But there are so many other folks. Van Damme, by the way, has 3 or 4 movies where he plays twins. It's kind of weird. Steven Seagal only has 2 good movies, Under Siege and Hard to Kill. Dolph Lundgren was not only Drago in Rocky IV, but did you know there is a sequel to Kindergarten Cop? I've seen it and it stars Dolph Lundgren. I love that trope that was started by Schwarzenegger of action movie stars doing a family-friendly movie where they have to take care of kids. Hulk Hogan has done it, Vin Diesel has done it, The Rock, Jackie Chan, and I'm going to include Jason Statham in this sequence in The Fate of the Furious. A hilarious trope that I want to see more of. Every movie Jason Statham has been in, I've seen. The best one is Transporter 2. Just give the James Bond franchise to Statham. He's cool and not creepy or rapey like James Bond tends to be. Statham will keep it fun, action-packed, and keep out the creepy, age-inappropriate love interest. The WWE has solid action movies. And I'm not just talking about the John Cena or Stone Cold Steve Austin ones. Bizarro Ryan Reynolds, Scott Adkins has good ones. Michael J. White's Falcon Rising is very good. Mike the Miz Mizani took over the Marine series, and those were pretty good. Of course, I've seen all the old school action movies, most Clint Eastwood westerns, and the entire Dirty Harry series. Fun fact, Meryl Streep based her performance in The Devil Wears Prada on Clint Eastwood. Wild. I've seen all the Charles Bronson vigilante movies. The GOAT, Bruce Lee, doesn't get enough credit for making action movies better. The mirror sequence in Enter the Dragon is pure art. The Nick Cage action movie trilogy of the 90s is pure magic. We can't forget the ladies. Michelle Yeoh is wonderful in everything. Carrie Ann Moss should have had a whole action movie heroine run after The Matrix. Mila Jovovich in Ultraviolet and Zoolander is amazing. Linda Hamilton in T2 and Terminator Dark Fate is so badass, I can't even. The last one I'll mention before this video turns into 20 hours of me talking about every single action movie I've ever seen. Cynthia Rothrock is never mentioned, but she had some solid action movies back in the 80s and 90s, before women were even considered as something other than damsels in distress. Well, actually, before her was the blaxploitation films, and Pam Grier is my favorite of all of those heroines. Taking a gun out of her afro is just so wonderful. I love it. Oh yeah, and Zack Snyder's Justice League is feminist and progressive, actually. That is the most controversial thing I'll ever say on this channel. Or is it? As you can see, I really love action movies. If it has explosions, a strong but silent protagonist, and especially cartoon violence, I've seen it and probably enjoyed it more than I should have. Even the really terrible ones I've seen and have laughed my booty off while watching them. Anyway, what are your thoughts on Last Blood or any other action movie? Do I make any good points, or am I not so secretly a bigot? Any and all comments, let me know in the comments down below. Enjoy action movies. Don't overanalyze everything. Have fun with your loved ones. Thank you so much for watching. And as always, salud, mi familia.